you like my content and you want to be notified every time I have new material, hit the subscribe button, and if you hit that little bell icon, you'll be notified when I have new content.
Today's project's going to be taking down that tree. The tree's about 50 years old. It was a dwarf blue spruce, but over the years, I guess it's lived its cycle here. The roots are bound, or for whatever reason, there was one on both sides of the driveway. I cut down the last one about 3 years ago. It died. This one's totally dead. I'm going to bring this one down. So that's today's project. We're going to bring this tree down, chop it up, put it on a trailer to take to the landfill. So let's get with it.
Okay, so starting out, I started out with, I used an electric saw. This is a corded electric saw. It's a very inexpensive brand. Usually I would use a gas saw, but I didn't want to deal with starting the saw so many times. Chainsaws are so particular. Usually you have to work on them the whole time that you use them, and again I had to work on this one even though it was electric, but I didn't have to keep starting it. So I decided I was going to try out this electric saw. It's really too small for this job. It was a 14 inch and I really needed about an 18, 19, so it was really too small, but it did get the job done eventually. You'll see I brought the tree down there. I initially started out cutting a wedge into the tree like I always do. I saw where I wanted the tree to land. I made that wedge at the appropriate place so that I could pull that wedge out, and when I made the final cut it would fall in that direction. Pretty simple. It just needed to be a bigger saw. I've taken down dozens of trees. I'm not that good at it, but I am capable of taking down a tree when I need to. Once again, I was working on the saw nearly the whole time, chain coming off, and if you watch right there,
Chainsaws are dangerous. Have to really be careful. Watch what you're cutting. I was using an electric chainsaw and it got me. So that's what can happen.
so there it is. It wasn't too bad. It could have been really bad. What happened was the tree, one of the branches that was holding the tree up actually broke right as I was cutting another branch. That forced the tree into my leg and forced the saw down across my leg, and luckily the chain came off as it hit my leg. There's the product. There's the tree after I got it out.
Part of the job is going to be taking out these overgrown bushes here. Thing's been growing about 20 years, I believe. So we're gonna get these things out of here, and the tree's gone. The video that we watched before has the tree in it, so let's get to it.
So here's the overgrown bushes. These things were about 11 or 12 feet away from the house. They have been growing out away from the house for the last several years at an alarming rate. So I decided that we just couldn't trim them back anymore. There was too much wood. They had to come out. They were just, one of the bushes had a bee's nest in it. The one on the far right, all the way down at the end. And this side of the house was just getting a really overgrown look. And it was almost impossible to trim with the height. So it's not my house, but I do care for this house, and so I decided it was best to take these bushes out. Now back to the tree incident. You have to be really careful. Always be careful when using a saw, even if it's an electric saw. It's just as dangerous. And I really lucked out there. That chain popped off right as it hit my leg, and I just got a scratch out of it rather than getting, if that thing would have bit into my leg, it would have been really bad. Right here I'm using, this is they go by different names, but this thing has like a little clamp on it, and it has inside that clamp, as you push, there's a chainsaw inside there, and that chainsaw goes down and it cuts across that branch that you're cutting. Pretty good product, really. You can see it did a really good job on this stuff. I'm impressed with it. Like I said, it goes by different names. I think this one is a Works, WORKS, and it does a real good job. Probably would be much better if it wasn't corded, but it would probably require so many batteries. So anyway, I continue to cut on these bushes. Normally I have a little process that I use when I take the bushes out, but the bush that you're seeing that I'm working on there, this was just an assortment of vines. There was not one big root, so there was nothing that I could pull out in a whole piece. It was maybe 20 small vines, so it had to come out this way. It was the only way you could take it out. So here further in the video, you'll see how I take out the other bushes. Now the one on the far end was too big. It was basically a tree with shrubbery around it. It had a huge mass of roots, and my truck with a chain wouldn't even budge on taking it out. So once again, I had to take it out piece by piece. Now that white piece of PVC you see there, that was just used to it had a water hose inside it, and that just kept the water hose in place. I disconnected the water hose and just took the PVC pipe out and away. And the plan is to take this stuff to the landfill. In the past, I would have burned this material at my property, but unfortunately I'm not able to do much burning anymore. So stuff like this becomes a problem when you have to try to get rid of it now. It has to go to the landfill. It's still on the trailer currently as I'm making this video, and it's probably expected to be there for another month. I have to get a day to take it down there and unload. It's going to be a full day getting rid of this stuff. Just as much of a job to get rid of it as it was to get it onto the trailer. So I'll eventually get it down there and get the trailer cleared off and ready for another project. It's a simple task. This is the way I approached it. There's a couple of different ways you could do it. The bushes that I just finished cutting on there, you could have possibly pulled them out with a chain together the way they are there, but my idea there was they were so heavy that I wouldn't be able to move them. So that's why I took them down so low before I took the roots out. Now the one I'm working on there, that's the only way it could come out. It was so massive. It was basically a tree trunk with all of those branches coming out. That's why it couldn't be, there was no way to trim these hedges back, because if you trim them, you get into the wood and there would be nothing left of them. So they had to come out, and in the end the house looks much better without them. Excuse me. It looks much cleaner, and I'm going to replace it with some it's fall now, so I may put some mums in there, seasonal, you know, give it a fall look. And mums will generally, if you leave mums alone and they're in a fairly protected area, they'll come back. I've had mums that came back for 5 years. So that it's actually a good option. You can, at the end of the year, you can just run over them with the lawnmower, cover them up, and the next year they come back. If they're going to come back, if they make it through the winter, they'll come back from from the ground. So you can see this was a massive tree inside there. I've got most of the branches off of it. Now there's some landscaping bricks there. I'm going to have to rearrange those so that there's an end point here at the end of this flower bed in the front. That's no problem though. I can make it look like it was meant to be that way. And you'll see as this massive bush comes down, the whole house, and it doesn't even show it completely here, but the whole house was covered in this green algae, mold, moss. I guess it would be moss. Even worse than what it shows. The camera doesn't show it, show all of it. And there was a lot of black discoloration all over the stone. Now this is a Bedford stone house. And a little tip, Bedford stone cleans very easily. But before you go putting a pressure washer on it, you should always try to do what I did, and that's mix just some bleach and water. Make sure you mix it appropriately. You know, if you don't put water with bleach, it won't work. And if you dilute it too far, it won't work. So make sure that for whatever you're trying to do that you have it diluted appropriately. Anyway, I used bleach on the whole end of this house, and Bedford stone really cleans up nicely with bleach normally. I cleaned this just with bleach and water, and by the next day this Bedford stone looked like it was brand new. It looked like it had just been cut, cleaned up beautifully. And if I'd have put a pressure washer on it, it would have been covered in streaks and marks, and it would have taken away some of the natural look to it. Would have looked too clean for the rest of the house. Although it looks brand new, the marks in it wouldn't have looked right. So here's the next process that I'm using on these shrubs. These are the ones with real large roots. So I'm going to use another process here. Wrap the chain around the base of the shrubs, and that's a truck tire, a large truck wheel. Large truck wheel. I don't know why I said tire. Large truck wheel, and I bring the chain up over the wheel. Normally I would have had the wheel standing up, but for whatever reason I could not get this thing to stand up. And I make sure that it's attached securely to the hitch on my truck. And I put my truck in low gear, and here I pull the slack out of the chain and got a real bad movement. The movement just didn't feel right, so I thought maybe it had slipped or something had broken, but just the chain tightening up, and another tug back in the truck, and another tug, and this one, the large root ball is out. It's the best way to remove shrubs like this. It takes the whole root ball out, and then what you can do is cut the root ball from the shrub, pull it back over the hole, get all the dirt out of it, and you have your dirt, you have your root ball out, and you have the shrubs out. And you'll see the process repeated a couple of times. Now unfortunately, or fortunately, when I pulled this root ball out, there was buried cable wire under the root, and it pulled the cable wire out. Fortunately, it wasn't attached to anything. It wasn't in active service, but you will see the big mess of this is old satellite service, this is cable service, it's internet service, and because it was hidden by Shrubs before, the service providers didn't do a good job at installing, so we had just balls of wire hanging everywhere. So I took wire ties and I tied these things up as neat as I could to tidy up. Here we go again with the truck wheel. This process really does a good job. Now this next, the large shrub, was actually the first time that I wasn't able to get a shrub out using this process. But you see, if you look over to the right, that was just a huge, just a massive tree basically that wasn't going to come out with my truck using this process. But you'll see this process does pull the complete root system out, and that makes a big difference because that's out of the ground and you can put the dirt back. This way you won't have in the future, you won't have all these holes forming. A lot of times if you leave shrubs in and you just cut the trunk off and you leave the roots in, for one thing, you can't go back and put other things in because they're bound by the old root ball. But another thing is, as those roots, as they decay, they start leaving holes in your landscaping. So it's best to get the complete root system out. It makes for a neater bed or a neater yard. If it's in your yard, if it's in the middle of the yard, it's a really big deal, because as that root system decays, you have serious holes that'll form in your yard, and you can't cut it properly with a riding mower or a push mower, and you will end up needing to put fill dirt in those areas if you don't remove that root while you can. And I think we're going to do this process again, so you get to see again how the process works. I wanted to show it all 3 times so you can see that it does work, and it does completely remove the root system. Now you do have to make sure that you have appropriate cables or chain. I like to use a chain. I think a cable would cut. I like to use a chain. I have used a strap in the past. Straps do work if they're strong enough to withstand the pull from the truck, which most straps are. Now this is all this work is much better if you have a hand, if you have somebody working with you. I would not recommend doing any of this work by yourself. Unfortunately, that's the way I generally end up working. I don't have anybody available to work with me doing these jobs, so I usually end up working by myself. But it's dangerous work, and for instance this here, I would have to get in and out of the truck, making sure that things were right. It's much easier if you have somebody working with you. much easier. And all this cleanup, as I'm cutting the branches, doubled the time this job took, easily doubled, just because I was working by myself. You know, if you have anybody that can help you just do some cleanup, it really goes a long way in helping. Well, I think we're going to get something here shortly. I don't know what happened here. I don't remember. But that bush will be history real soon. Yeah, back to the incident with the tree. The branch that I was sawing wasn't the reason that the tree fell. That branch had no weight bearing on it. It just happened to be a coincidence when I was sawing that the branch that was bearing all the weight, it broke. And that moved the entire trunk in my direction, and the trunk hit the saw, and that caused the chain to go into my leg or skim off my leg. And like I say, once again, I was very lucky the chain came off the instant that it hit my leg, and I was very fortunate. And again, that shows you should have somebody working with you. Absolutely somebody working with you when you're using a chainsaw. Really strange, these hedges, bushes, they had very small trunks, root systems. Normally when I pull these out, they have really large root balls. Now, these were very large shrubs, and you'll see that root ball on that shrub was tiny, and that was the complete thing. It took the whole thing out. There was nothing left in the ground. And we're getting close to the end. I'm going to show some pictures here and just some cleanup. I'll show some final pictures. You'll see that the green moss is already gone. This is the next day. I've already sprayed it down, and the sun hit it and just cleaned this Bedford stone up really nice. Ended up looking really nice on the end. I am going to go back and paint some of the metal around the window frames and plant some mums, and this thing will look good. It'll look really nice. So that's going to about do it for this episode. That's the way I do it. They might do it different. That's the way I do it. We'll see you next time.